Got your whistle? Asked Gabriel.
Yep,
replied Pista, showing it to Gabriel. The whistle was attached to an electric cord that, in turn, was firmly rooted to her belt. Bells? Asked Gabriel. Pista jingled the bells in her dress. These are meant to alert anything around them of their presence. That way, nothing would be startled by their sudden appearance in charge. Water and snacks? Asked Gabriel. Pista patted the bags on her waist, saying, Check, check, check. If I tried to do that, we would have been here for half an hour, Nish commented. Yeah, but I ripped a crocodile bear straw off. Gives me a bit more oomph, Gabriel explained, double-checking his backpack. Perhaps it was a bit of an overreaction, considering this was a long but unarduous hike. Their guide, a sizable quadrupedal man with a face full of tentacles, his back had a small sail, used as a display structure and the defense mechanism to make himself appear bigger than he was. It seemed somewhat unnecessary, considering he was as big as a white rhino. The skin was coarse and scaly, giving the gentleman a rugged and tank-like quality, as though he could go toe-to-toe with any other life form in the galaxy.
Please, Mr. Rattler, I'm squeamish,
Aeogeus said, his tentacle making an undulating motion. Sorry, don't know what came over me, Gabriel replied, and he meant it. He had rarely thought about the events of that day because although most people assumed Gabriel had effortlessly beaten his opponents, he knew he had escaped by the skin of his teeth. Aeogeus was one of those people. He had actually gone weak in the knees when it was confirmed that Gabriel was indeed the same as the one he had heard on the news. It was an understandable reaction, as they were now on a whole other continent than Reshu City. Roughly the size of India, though shaped like a starfish with 3 arms, the continent of Silex was located in the northern hemisphere. While the climate of Menegrad varied little, at least compared to Earth, it was just high enough that the environment was temperate compared to the South's Mediterranean. Gabriel welcomed the drop in temperature. While his suit had a cooling system, it could still get pretty toasty inside this thing.
Now, if you will follow me, I will show you our route,
Aeogeus said. Aeogeus led them into a small log cabin. On the wall was a map of the surrounding area, with a long route that winded around the park.
The first leg of our journey will take us over the hedlund Wolds. Then we'll take a break to eat our dinner,
Aeogeus explained, tracing one of his tentacles over the route. A drink in my case, pointed out Gabriel. We are well aware you cannot eat, Gabriel, and we're very grateful for bringing us here, Rizzotti said. Will you just let me win? It's important for my psychological well-being, Gabriel retorted, and Rizzotti snorted in response. Gabriel also smiled. You know, I'm wondering if I should have waited another month and brought the suit with the airlock thing so I could still eat solid foods, he added, pointing at his face. Then you would have never met us, and Pista would not be here, Nish countered, holding her daughter close.
I hate to interrupt, but the situation is important. We can't leave until you've heard it,
Aeogeus explained as calmly as possible, barely raising his voice. From his reaction, you would not believe he hated being interrupted, and this was not just a problem due to the species barrier. Even other Loyal could not tell. Of course, Mr. Rattler was the real deal, and he was willing to give the man more leeway than most. You are right, I apologize. Please continue, Gabriel replied, gesturing with his hands to say Aeogeus had his full attention. Aeogeus was glad to hear it. There had been a slight niggle in his mind that Mr. Rattler would simply ignore everything he had to say. Gabriel's encounter with the Vatoru and Carnodon making him arrogant. However, that did not seem to be the case, and Mr. Rattler seemed to embody humility.
Thank you. After we have obtained nutrients, we will make our way to the Oblek coast and walk along the seafront before arriving at the nesting colonies, Aeogeus explained.
Colonies of what? Asked Gabriel.
Good question. Dozens of species make the cliffs, columns, and beaches of the Metodolu Sea as a breeding ground, Aeogeus replied. After that, we will follow the trail south into the temperate rainforests. I am well aware that Tafanda do not do so well in heavy rain, and ponchos will be provided. We will then camp at a campsite in Gerald's Glade. The campsite has full toilet facilities, Aeogeus added. Yes, Gabriel said, pumping his arm. He had been worried that they would be broken when they arrived. After daybreak and breakfast, we'll head east into the continent's interior, moving through the great interior meadows. Then shortly before dusk, we should reach the Portal Cave system, and we will spend our final night there before making our way west and ending the hike in the small village of Warutteri, Aeogeus finished, bringing their tentacle back to their face. Any questions? Asked Aeogeus. How rainy is this rainforest? Inquired Nish. It will rain at least twice a day, but the ponchos are damn good. We've had Tafanda on the trail before, and they were impressed by how dry they remained, Aeogeus replied. Are there any big scary animals in the path? Asked Pista, finding her confidence once again. Aeogeus crouched and replied, Some of the animals can be quite angry if you get too close, but we will be fine as long as we stay on the path and give them plenty of space. There are no big predators in this part of the park.
An exaggeration, to be sure, but if it kept the girl calm, it was fine. Hypercarnivores were rare on habitable worlds, while obligate carnivores, animals that needed meat or would die, were utterly unheard of. Even the Carnodon and Ventoru supplemented their diets with fruits, and could hypothetically survive on an all-vegetarian diet. Getting a Carnodon to do that, however, was another matter entirely. There is a blue trail on the map. What is that? Asked Gabriel, pointing at the route.
That is the public path. We'll be taking a longer but more exclusive route, explained Karuja.
Isn't that a bit unfair? Only allowing people to pay to see certain sights, said Rizzotti.
You're not wrong, but you need to consider that if hundreds of people walk along the trail daily, they will damage it, either on purpose or by accident, explained Karuja.
Ain't that the truth? Gabriel commented. We're calling wildlife trusts and environmental groups, begging tourists not to take rocks and scratch their names into heritage sites back on Earth. Sure, one person doing this would have no impact in the grand scheme of things, but if thousands of people all have the same idea, then the issue occurs. A couple more questions were asked about the biggest incline, and if there were any narrow ledges, but the trail was very gentle, and their concerns were unfounded. So, how long have you been a tour guide? Asked Rizzotti, looking away from a group of cajole grazing on the heather-like plants that dominated the wilds.
20 years now, and the creator willing, I'll be doing it for another 80 more, Karuja replied, holding a pair of binoculars over his tentacles.
Karuja looked over at Gabriel, currently playing with Pista, chasing her up and down the trail.
It must be quite something to be friends with Mr. Radlew, he commented before looking at Rizzotti.
Yes, my girlfriend met him while they were in the hospital, and things just grew from there, Rizzotti said, watching Gabriel, who finally caught Pista and lifted her into the air.
What's he like, in private?
Karuja asked, looking away. Were they giving any attention to him would let Gabriel know they were talking about him. Reserved, but he has his moments, Rizzotti replied. I take it you're a fan.
That's obvious, asked Karuja,
raising three of his tentacles and swaying slightly. I was nervous too, Rizzotti offered. Quite the juxtaposition, isn't it? He went claw to claw with those animals, and there he is pretending to be beaten up by Pista. Rizzotti pointed, and there Gabriel was, begging Ish for help to save him from the gremlin. No one present but Gabriel knew what a gremlin was. They could make a good guess.
If it weren't for the different body shapes, you would think they really were father and daughter, Karuja noted.
Rizzotti did not reply, but she did agree. Checking the time, Karuja realized if they did not get a move on, they would arrive at camp after dark, and that was a hazardous scenario.